This is Manchester city centre, and behind all these posh shops lies a story that changed Britain and the world. And it's all down to this stuff: cotton. It's only just over 200 years ago that cotton cloth started to be manufactured in this country, and Manchester soon became the powerhouse and driving force behind the new cotton industry. The building at the heart of this story lies here in the city centre, and it revolutionised British society. Built in 1780, on this spot was the first cotton mill in Manchester. Today, it's buried under this car park, and we've got just 3 days to locate and retrieve one of the most important historic sites in Britain. Not that you'd know it today. Francis, if there was a mill here, they've managed to wipe out every single piece of evidence of it.
Well, not actually, Tony. Behind you there, you can see you've got cobbles. Now, I think that was the surface of the yard that went outside the mill. Now, certainly early 19th century cobbles. So presumably then, Mike, the front of the mill was ran along those cobbles.
Yes, Francis, we've actually got a number of maps. This is one from 1831, and it shows the mill as a rectangular building with a reservoir below it, and then the cobbles running in between.
If we know that, then why are we bothering to dig the site?
Because although this is a factory that's been used for 150 years, Tony, we don't know how the mill was laid out, we don't know how it developed.
But digging one rectangular building isn't going to take 3 days, is it?
Not one building, it's been rebuilt a number of times. Burnt down in the 1850s, for instance.
So how are we going to locate it?
Well, you see, we've had a bit of a deliberation about this. The obvious one would be to whack a trench right through the middle of it, but we really want to find out a bit more about how well preserved it is, where the width of it is. So what we're going to do is just pop one in through there. That will give us the precise width of the walls, it will give us the location of the walls, and it will give us some idea of the depth of deposits as well.
You seem quite excited about this. But your passion is prehistory.
Yeah, but this is the prehistory of the Industrial Revolution.
Good answer.
Yeah!
Nice one.
Arkwright created 2 cutting-edge systems for the mill. The first was a steam engine to power the mill directly, something no one else had yet achieved. The second was an innovative water system that used a steam engine together with a water wheel. We hope to find evidence of both systems near the centre of the mill. But to find this, we need to find the mill's walls. Even though we've got various plans, they aren't reliable. So the diggers will place trench 1 here, which they hope will stretch across one side of the original mill. The site hasn't been developed since the Blitz of 1940, when a mill rebuilt in the Victorian era was destroyed by the Luftwaffe. Because of the hard modern tarmac, the geophys team can't stick their normal sensors in the ground. Instead, they're using radar to cover the whole mill area, which will take them all day. Within an hour of stripping the surface, Phil thinks he's hit the jackpot.
Kerry, this is it. This is the wall of the mill house. We've got the yard out there, and here's the wall, and then inside the mill. Let's see a bit more of this wall here.
If Phil has hit the wall of Arkwright's 1780s mill, he's uncovered a building at the root of massive change in Manchester. A building that helped transform a village into a metropolis. As day 1 nears an end, we're still not sure if Phil's walls are Arkwright, but Mike's confident of the date of the wall in trench 3. Well, we stopped digging and starting the recording. What's happened here?
Well, what we've got here, Tony, is we've got the end of the mill. We've got the cobbles here,
Yeah.
and then we've got a line of bricks. They're a bit bashed about by a couple of holes which have been bashed through in the mid-20th century, but either side we have brick walling. You see there's got 2 rows of bricks here, and then a row of bricks and some stone sets over here, and we think that's the doorway into the mill.
You say it's the doorway into the mill, but earlier you said to me there were lots of mills at different times.
There are lots of mills. Now, we're pretty certain this is Arkwright's 1781 to 82 mill.
Why?
This is a brick from 1854. It's very sharp, it's wire cut, and it's quite chunky, very nicely made. However, that is a brick from this wall. much more irregular. It's made in a wooden mould. It's a slightly smaller size, and it's far more irregular. And this was made in Manchester between 1780 and 1820. This is the brick from Arkwright's first mill.
I bet you're glad you found that.
Absolutely delighted.
So, Matt, what are we going to do with this trench now?
Well, that's it really, Tony. It's job done here, but we have got a bonus in that when we got to the end of the trench, we've got this huge stone column base here, and if you look closely, you can see the circle there where the cast iron flange would have been at the bottom of the column, and these would have run all the way down the centre of the mill there.
So presumably that's proof positive that we're right inside the factory.
Absolutely.
By the end of the day, we've found at least one piece of original Arkwright wall, and we're uncovering possible sites for the engine. And there's a whole other side of the story yet to explore. For you, this dig isn't just about some old bits of machinery, is it?
No, it's about the really terrible lives of the people that worked in the mill and lived right in its shadow. In fact, over there were some buildings that we think had cellar dwellings underneath them, where the people may have actually lived. We're going to look at those tomorrow.
Should be some good finds there, shouldn't there?
Hope so.
But in addition to that, we've started work on this trench here, which is going to be huge. And already we've come up with this really interesting arch here. So tomorrow, we're not only going to try and get into the hearts and minds of the people who lived here, but into the heart of the factory that dominated their lives.
These are the same type as this, which would make them Arkwright as well.
Well, you know, there was the whole thing is Arkwright.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question. That wall there is later than that wall. It sits on the plinth there.
Confused? So are we. Suddenly, Mike and Phil realise that 1780 bricks may not mean a 1780 wall. So this arch may be nothing to do with Arkwright's engine. Worse, all the dating they've done on the walls of the mill so far is thrown into question.
Now, I think we do have a little bit of Arkwright here, and that's these column bases. You can see there's one there, another one there,
Yeah.
and another one coming up there. Arkwright used to use column bases to run down the centre of his buildings. So that gives us the alignment, because we've also found one in that little trench over there.
This tiny little thing here, yeah.
That's right, and that also had the only bit of Arkwright wall that I'm prepared to swear by. Right. Now, you can see where those two ladies have obligingly stood.
Yeah. Hello.
They're down the centre of the building.
Yeah.
And then the other one is over there,
Yeah.
by the genuine Arkwright wall. Now, what we do know is that Arkwright's buildings were 30 feet wide. If the columns are going down the middle, if we measure out 15 feet on either side, we'll get where the walls ought to be.
So do we do that?
Yeah, you can come and help me, come on. Grab the tape,
Yeah.
hop in next door to that column,
Yeah. From the middle of the column?
the middle of the column,
Right.
here we go, 15 feet.
Right.
So the wall by rights ought to be here.
And there's solid brick all over it.
Yes, that's a slight problem, isn't it? What we'll do is look underneath them just to make sure that there is wall there.
And if we are on the money there?
It's Arkwright's mill!
Bridge has made great progress on her Angel Street house, revealing nearly a complete cellar dwelling in just a couple of hours. Victorian reports from Frederick Engels and others describe the hardships of living and working in the mills of the area. One of our team, Stuart, has got a personal insight into what mill life would have been like. His mother worked in a mill near Leeds.
I remember how little money we had in those early days, and I can remember hiding from the rent man because when we were a bit short on a Monday night, we used to have to keep quiet. And the lights were turned down because the rent man was expected and things like that.
It's weird because whenever we talk about mill life, it seems like it was another era. It's amazing to me that you, who are a relatively young bloke,
Thank you.
still remember it.
Well, I do. I grew up with it. My mother was a weaver, worked in the weaving sheds all her life. She was incredibly physically strong. She worked 8 looms at once, but had to keep them all going the whole time, so incredibly hard physical work.
You know, one of the historians told me, and I thought this was so extraordinary, that all those northern comedians who used to speak like that with all those gestures, they actually did it, not as an affectation, but because virtually all of them worked in the mills, and it was so noisy there that they continually had to do all that elaborate communication, otherwise no one would ever understand what they were saying.
Yeah, and I can actually remember the looms turning, the noise, the workforce, the people. And one thing I remember about the loss of my mum's friends, the weavers, is that they'd lost fingers. Because when the shuttle was going backwards and forwards, you had to catch it and turn it round. And if you didn't get it right, it took your finger off. And I remember a lot of my mum's friends all sort of missing the odd end of their finger or a finger missing and things like that. So injury and deafness and hard work were all part of a weaver's life.
Beginning of day 3, and guess what? It's raining in Manchester. Mind you, it would have been pretty wet here 220 odd years ago when Richard Arkwright built his mill, because we're pretty sure the whole thing was powered by water and steam. Not that we've found that much of the factory, because every time we've got anywhere near it, it's miraculously seems to disappear through our fingers, isn't it? So are you really confident that we actually do have the water wheel here?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, hooray, hooray, hooray. And yet you've been found wanting so many times over the last 48 hours. Why are you so sure?
Well, all the maps tell us the water wheel was in this position here where we stood.
We've seen it on the radar plan, but if you're not convinced, look at this vertical section. There's the top of the ground. That red line marks that road surface. Below that road surface is this clear response. That has to be the wheel pit.
And does it work for you in terms of the logic of the architecture?
It does, Tony, because we're in the middle of the mill, and that, in an Arkwright mill, is where the water wheel will be.
So why is it so significant that we find this wheel?
Well, it'll tie everything down.
I mean, if you know the position of the water wheel, it transfers the energy via a shaft into the mill, and once you know the position of that, you can work out where all the looms are, how many there would be. The whole layout is dependent on finding that.
Back on site, the hunt for the wheel pit isn't going quite as planned. Francis, can I remind you of an exchange earlier on today? Tony, are you confident that there is a water wheel in this trench? You four, yes, 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 yes. Hello, water wheel, where are you? It's not there.
It's turned out to be a little bit more complicated than that, Tony.
Is it?
Yeah. In fact, it's all happening as we speak. Phil down there has got something, and I don't know what it is. And he won't tell us.
Francis!
Yeah?
Got it!
Really?
Yes!
Yards away, Phil's now uncovered the thing that ran under the wall.
Come and have a look.
Oh, heck.
What do you think of that then?
I wasn't expecting that, Phil.
It's a 20th century drain.
Well, I'm completely gobsmacked.
I reckon we might actually finally have this well pit, you know.
That is deep.
That is deep.
How deep are you now?
Well, I did dangle a tape over there and it was 12 foot, so it's supposed to be 15 foot, so my money's on 3 more foot.
And that's 8 feet wide.
That's 8 foot wide, just bang on the money for that one.
And we didn't see it.
All the walls down there, all 4 of them, appear to be lined in this stuff, and it's all the way round.
Well, that looks like that pitch or bitumen, but that's the sealant.
That's right. Then presumably that hole was designed to take water. That's going to protect the brickwork.
Yeah, it would have to be watertight. So that could mean that's a well. What if this is the very first steam engine he installed, the 1781 one, which was meant to be running the machinery? That would have to be in the middle of the mill, like a water wheel, to run the machinery. It failed, but instead of building a new engine, they adapted it as a pumping engine. That would mean that we've found our 1781 engine and it, under our very noses. It was here all the time. Okay,
thanks, mate.
It's deep.
It's massive, isn't it?
All right, so if the wheel was in there, what about the steam?
Come over here. We now think this is the site of Arkwright's 1781 steam engine he tried to use to power textile machinery.
But if that was his very first engine, that was the one that didn't work properly.
It was.
So why is it still here?
Well, it was positioned in the middle of the mill so it could run the line shafting to power the textile machinery that way.
Yeah.
It didn't work, so what it looks like they've done is they've reused it for pumping water from the lower reservoir through the well there and out onto a spillway into channels running that way. Somebody has tried to apply steam to textile machinery.
So this isn't just archaeology, this is history.
This is where the modern world begins.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
Our site's on what used to be the border between Buckinghamshire and Northamptonshire near Milton Keynes. Excavations by students at an archaeological field school revealed the building within the smaller Cropmark circle. Pat and Jonathan, who run the school, are pretty confident about what they've uncovered. So after all your hard work, what have you got here?
Well, we have a 12th century building, some 11 metres long by 5 metres wide, 3 equal bays inside. We have the suggestion of a staircase.
This is here?
Yes, that's
Which way is it going then?
And it's going straight up to the side of the building.
I see. What do you think it might be?
Well, the presence of the staircase indicates it could be a first-floor hall. Other possibilities are a hunting lodge or possibly part of a monastic grange.
It's intriguing, isn't it, Mick?
Yeah.
And we've got our Jonathan here to try and decode what the building might be.
I'll stick my oar in, yeah. I know it's a meaty site, this one. I want to get my teeth into it. And indeed, if this is a first-floor chamber at the end of a hall, then we should be standing in the top bar of a capital T-shaped plan with the hall going off that way. If it's right, it'll be a big discovery. But I must say, from what I see, it looks a bit more like cowshed than two-storey block. So I really want to get in there and have a look.
Because it's a few years since this trench was dug, we've got to re-excavate the building, check the measurements, and see if we agree with Pat and Jonathan's conclusions. If it was originally a 2-storey building, it would probably have been a manor house with a high-status T-block where the lord lived and ran a large estate. The best alternative is that it could have been a hunting lodge. While we get to grips with the building in the small enclosure, Geophys are looking for the larger enclosure further down the field. The crop marks aren't visible now, so they've got to cover a big area. To speed things up, they're using their quickest technique, magnetometry, looking for telltale magnetic variations which can indicate burnt material in a ditch or around a hearth, for example. The previous excavation produced an absolute mound of pottery. Paul Blinkhorn's already identified where it was made and dated it. It seems that the building was occupied for a surprisingly short time.
So now, is the character of this wall the same as that opposite one there?
No, it's not. This wall is far more crumbly than this one, but there are traces of mortar in it.
Well, that's interesting, because if this is a big chamber block, I'd expect it to be built at the same time and for them to be linked. So I want to see the end walls, what we have of them, and to uncover this. I really want to see this wall.
The wall's been reburied since the excavation, so we just have to dig it up again.
Ah, no, that's better, look. Let's have a look at the width, because that one is skinny for me. It's skinny and it's badly built, and I wouldn't want to live in the first floor of a house that had been built like that.
So what did you say your internal measurement was?
It was about 375.
375. Come on, Jonathan, get that tape out. 5 for runners there.
Well, if that goes from there to there, well, then we might be in business.
We might be in business indeed.
This wall may just be the right size for a 2-storey building. But just as the archaeology is looking more promising, Stuart's piling on the pressure with a whole new set of questions. Do we have any evidence that there was a manor here on the ground?
I don't think we do at the moment. What it looks like is if we've got a building set within an earlier enclosure of another period.
Right.
What we've got is a whole load of these things.
loads of
here.
them, yeah.
This is the enclosure there. These look very typically prehistoric in date to me. In the pattern of fields and boundaries here, I'm not seeing anything which gives me any suggestion there's a manorial site. I mean, there should be a church or a chapel, there should be other buildings, there should be road layouts.
There's a building on its own at the moment.
That's very much what it looks like. We've also got an overlapping problem, that we've got royal hunting forest in this area.
So could what we have be a hunting lodge?
It's possible it could be something like a bailiff's lodge, something like that, an estate manager. At the moment, it could almost be anything, but it doesn't look like it's a manorial site to me.
And as the excavation uncovers more of the walls, it now seems less and less like a manor house to Phil and Jonathan as well.
And we ain't got a wall that's 4 foot wide and it ain't 4 foot deep. What's that tell us about our building?
Well, it looks more like it's going to be a ground floor one.
But Pat, you got a staircase.
It was only ever the possibility that it was a staircase. I'm willing to sort of forgo with that idea.
I mean, it looks like it might be actually a lower status dwelling.
Then we've got to try and fit in where actually the high status stonework comes from.
That's true. It's all to play for, isn't it?
It still is.
Look, that's where we did the initial strip, and it just was so weak we couldn't see it. But there's the circuit.
Well, that's
Follow
quite clear
all the way
there, isn't
around. We've got problems with that pylon, the electricity.
Right.
But if you want to put a trench across the ditch, we can mark one for you easily.
With these two trenches, we should be able to date the ditches and see if there's any other sign of medieval life inside this larger enclosure.
Well, I think there's still a lot to do here. You talk about this being a peasant's hovel, but I mean, it looks like a medieval longhouse that belonged to, you know, a villein, a peasant farmer. The thing is, they don't occur on their own. You know, it'd be very odd to have one stuck out here in the countryside. They usually come in this part of the world as part of a settlement.
And what about all these strange enclosures surrounding it?
When you see them plotted out across the landscape as Stuart's done, it looks like an Iron Age landscape underneath this medieval one. It would be very unusual to get circular or oval enclosures in the medieval period. They're nearly all rectangular, square and so on. And of course what we need to sort out there is to date those.
Anything else?
We still don't know the context of this. If this is 12th, 13th century, it'll appear in the documents somewhere.
Stuart and Dawn did have some success looking through the documentary records in Aylesbury.
To show you what we've got, this area in pink is the manor of Hanslope in here, with our site right at the top corner.
Right.
Now, what we've been able to establish is that the site itself actually is within the Royal Forest area of Salsey. This is all part of the forest, and therefore our site will be subject to forest jurisdiction, as it were. Now, the evidence for that is that we've got names like Hanslope Green, which we've been able to identify, mentioned as being within the forest. Right. Salsey Green as being within the forest.
Well, that's right, and I undertook some research into the subtenancies of Hanslope Manor. I came across a family name of Bosenham. Now they seem to have seem to have taken their name from this northern part of the parish. Just across the parish boundary is Bosenham Mill.
Yeah, we cross that every day.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But I think that name applies to a bigger area. Bosenham literally means Boser spur of land. Now the mill is not on a spur of land. Our site is on a spur of land, so I think we've got a real clue there.
So that might be the name of the site that we're doing then?
I think it might well be.
Ah, well, that's brilliant, isn't it, to have a name to attach to it?
So we know that our site, Bosenham, was in the forest in the 12th century. And we also know from the Domesday Book that this was quite a wealthy area, with, amongst other things, a predominance of pigs. Hanslope boasts 1,000 pigs, compared to the handful its neighbours had. But keeping pigs in and around the Royal Forest had its risks. This was part of a huge patchwork of hunting grounds created by William the Conqueror, which spread across the country. Not even the barons could hunt or farm there without royal permission, and peasants would get in serious trouble.
It looks like we've got a hearth or small oven or kiln there, right at the edge of the trench, and possibly another collapsed one here. But of course, we've only got this kind of 2 metre wide slot going across here. So
and have you got any pottery from it?
More of the same pottery coming out here. It's all medieval, similar to the stuff coming out of the ditch.
And Paul's worked out that there are 2 concentrations of pottery. Usually, big deposits of broken pot are found in so-called middens or rubbish pits. 2 middens could mean 2 houses.
What we've got is this massive spread of pottery and domestic refuse right up against the wall of the building. Just where you'd expect to find a domestic midden.
Now, suppose, I mean, one of the things we were deliberating about yesterday was where there might have been a doorway.
I'd say from this, there must have been a doorway in this wall. Nearly always the midden's near a door.
You just go out and chuck it out.
Chuck it out, yeah. That's basically
I like
what they did.
I like that. OK, day one, I said it's a meaty site, OK? Yeah. Now, the theory is this. No one actually lived here. It's a pig processing plant.
Right.
Come on, justify this.
Oh, OK.
Given the rubble that you've got in front of you.
It's It's very small for a house, okay?
Yeah.
Could still be, you know, peasants' small hovel or something, but I'm suggesting pigs are brought in, possibly water heated, scald the pigs, you know, and dehair them, and then maybe this is some kind of a smokehouse. Those weird metal clamps we found might just be for pigs' legs.
Now, when you told me this, I thought it was brilliant. You're the professional. How does it feel to you?
The thing that helps, I think, is that in Domesday Book, for this particular manor, they record 1,000 pigs on the manor. You know, using the woods for grazing and so around it. That's a hell of a lot of pigs to have around.
And what's this doing here? Which is the only hearth we've found in the entire place. It's not in the middle, as you might expect, but it's slightly outside the building.
Do you buy the idea of it leaking its smoke this way into the house?
Well, you feel where the wind's coming from now.
Over there,
It's
without
coming
any
from
doubt.
behind
Yeah.
us. So prevailing
Yeah.
winds from the southwest, you put this at the southwest corner, it's going to blow the smoke into the building, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's in the right place.
It's all pretty plausible, isn't it?
Here, we've got lots of blobs on the geophysics. And so we've opened this area. This is where Matt was working in a narrow trench over there yesterday.
Yeah.
But now we're getting all sorts of burnt areas, bits of pottery, 12th century, stuff like that. So it's sort of looking like occupation, I think.
So much interesting stuff coming up.
There
but we
is, yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
interpret it yet. What's this thing here, Bridge?
Well, you can see, Tony, that's a very circular-looking structure. Got these great pitch stones all the way around the outside of it. All the stones really heat-affected. It's surrounded by a lot of burning, discrete areas of charcoal, so it's definitely looking something like a hearth.
We started out with just one building, but it's now becoming clear that Bosenham was a busy place. Pot and bone from the circular ditch show that people were also living down here in the 12th century at exactly the same time as the building was occupied.
I can see that there are all of the main domesticates, who are cattle jaws, sheep jaws, pig also, and there's even a bit of horse here.
Inside the big enclosure, they've uncovered a medieval workplace. Good job, Matt. What have we got?
Well, we've got a large post hole there, another enormous one here.
So presumably they were posts supporting a big roofed building?
Yeah, huge. I mean, these are really substantial, and it still had the remains of a scorched post in it as well. Got another shallow post hole there, another one with packing stones there, so we may have even an internal wall going up that way.
And what's that?
Well, this to me looks like a small collapsed oven or kiln of some sort, vaguely circular. You can see it there. Over here, we've got a much better example of what I think that probably looked like. Beautiful circular oven or something there, still in quite a good nick. And over here, we have another one. This one's slightly more collapsed, but you can see the base of it is all scorched and burnt. And going round this area here is this ditch, which comes along here, round here, and goes off to the corner of the trench over there.
Lots of finds.
Yeah, a huge amount of really beautiful finds here. I mean, look at that jug handle.
That's
gorgeous.
Gorgeous. There's a heck of a lot of activity going on here. This settlement of pig farmers at Bosenham has given us an unfamiliar glimpse of ordinary life in the medieval manor of Hanslope. Powerful nobles, such as the Mordwits, grabbed the headlines of history by quarrelling with the king. But the story of Bosenham is really the history of ordinary people. Pig farmers who grazed their animals in the forest and slaughtered and scalded and smoked them in the enclosures. Remarkably, this dig has taken our archaeologists into uncharted territory, because almost nothing's known about medieval pig farmers.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses, and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
Finovia, or Binchester as it's known today, lies on Deer Street, the major Roman road that ran from York through Hadrian's Wall to the far north of the empire. This strategic route was lined with forts, the backbone of the Roman military presence in Britain. And the one at Finovia is a fantastic excavated example. It's a classic layout of barracks for up to 1,000 men, kitchens and stables, and a commandant's house, complete with a luxurious bathhouse. All surrounded by a massive stone wall. And beyond that wall was the vicus, the civilian settlement on which the fort depended. But so far, archaeologists have almost completely ignored it.
There have been loads of people digging inside the fort, but actually only one person has ever had a look outside in the Vicus area. It's this chap, the Reverend Hoople, in 1891, and he produced this very interesting plan of buildings here, and we've got sketches of what he found. Now, these are really substantial bits of masonry, lots of different phases.
They do look like illustrations in a late 19th century children's book, don't they? And we have been ripped off by antiquarians before who've come up with all these fantasies which you actually can't substantiate. Is this stuff real?
Well, we've got something that can help us decide, because look at that aerial photograph. I mean, this is sensational. Here we've got Deer Street, and look, what looks exactly like these buildings very clearly here. I mean, you can even see it, that looks like the long building there. I mean, it just looks wonderful. It looks like this is a really accurate plan.
So if you just go around the outside, then we'll just crisscross it with lines, cut them in curves about that.
So we're opening our first trench over the area dug by Hoople in the 19th century. And it should contain substantial stone buildings belonging to the Vicus. But all this area, including the fort, is a scheduled ancient monument, and that means our digging options here are very limited. The entire area on that side of this fence is scheduled, so we can only put in one trench there. But given how big that fort was, we think the Vicus might extend over here, which is unscheduled, where we can put in as many trenches as we like, if we get the evidence. Stu, any joy so far?
Well, this field looks rather interesting, Tony, because we've got some aerial photographs. There's the fort, that's the fence you've just walked along. Can you see that angle there? That looks like it might be an annex, a ditch feature or something, an annex onto the fort. Either that or it's even a remnant of an earlier fort or something of that sort of order. And there's another aerial photograph which shows a road coming out of the entrance to the fort, heading over that way. So, yeah, there's a possibility of lots in here.
And almost immediately, we've got our first find.
Roman, our first piece of Samian.
While Phil works his way through the plough soil, our resident historian has been casting his somewhat sceptical eyes over our geophys.
Well, I don't think it's a temple, because a Romano-Celtic temple wouldn't normally turn up here, which is that kind of shape. I think it's much more likely to be a mausoleum.
Why do you say that?
Well, it reminds me of a mausoleum just outside Rome on the Appian Way, which consists of an enclosure wall and then with a central tomb in the middle.
So what's the difference between a temple and a mausoleum?
A mausoleum is a place that's dedicated to the memory of a deceased person. You might actually worship there religiously. You know, you'd go and perhaps offer sacrifices to the spirits of your departed. But I'd guess that that's more likely to turn out to be the mausoleum of maybe a commanding officer of this fort.
Well, finding the last resting place of a Roman commander doesn't happen every day. And I have to admit the geophysics results are some of the most striking we've ever seen on Time Team. So, with a strong sense of anticipation, we open our third trench over what looks like one of the walls of our possible mausoleum.
That's almost exactly the line of the wall where that sheep track is.
We'll hold you to that.
You know what I said? Almost exactly.
Ah, almost exactly.
Yeah.
I've never known a sheep walk in a straight line.
No. A bit like yourself, isn't it? After the beer.
After a few beers, yeah.
We put this rather long trench in here because earlier today John did some geophys here and he came up with two things which look suspiciously like ditches. Naomi, can I come in your trench?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
This is the edge of one of our ditches. This is the ditch fill. Okay, and if we come this way,
yeah,
where this lighter patch is, this is our other edge, so it's quite a wide ditch.
That is a heck of a big ditch, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's that there?
Well, here is just something we're just uncovering. It looks like a nice piece of mortaria.
Which is?
Which is kind of like a pestle and mortar for grinding food.
And this stuff here?
Again, just another nice, chunky vessel.
Both Roman?
It's definitely looking that way.
So does that mean that we can date this ditch as Roman?
I should say so, yeah.
I've built up the basic topography of the landscape as it is now. And on top of it, I've dropped what would have been the fort. And the first thing I've noticed is half the fort's hanging off the landscape.
I mean, there is a very good reason for that, because this side of the fort has actually slipped away. There's been a big landslip on this side here by the river, and it literally has gone. So it looks rather nice, but you're going to have to lose that side of it.
Okay.
But what that illustrates really well is this high ground that the fort sits on, because it actually sits on effectively a raised island, doesn't it? The river on one side, the valley down here. That's a really dramatic piece of topography for dominating this major crossing of the river here.
Very distinctive.
So we extend Trench 2 into the area we hope's an early fort and continue to excavate our possible mausoleum trench. We've now uncovered this fantastic wall, and we need to work out how it relates to our potential cremation urn.
So that's cleaning it really nicely now, isn't it? With that should be the inner face, according to the geophys, of whatever we've got here.
I'll take your word for that.
With not one but two discoveries of potentially national significance, our hunt for the Vicus takes a back seat, with only Matt left scraping away in search of the substantial stone buildings recorded in the 19th century. Matt, we've got a mausoleum down there, we've got cremation burials, we've got a brand new Roman fort that no one's ever seen before. What have you got in your trench?
Well, apart from all this stone rubble, we've got hope, and we've got a day and a half as well, so we'll see how it goes.
The mausoleum alone would be a major discovery, but we also think we might have discovered a huge earlier fort. We know the fort that's visible today was built around 130 AD, so to prove this one's earlier, we need datable evidence.
So now you've got some decent edges to the ditch, you can get down into it now, I suppose.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see how deep this goes now.
I reckon it's going to actually come a fair old way down.
I hope so.
Have you got anything coming out of it?
Yeah, we've got some nice bits. There's this lovely Samian bowl.
That's nice, isn't it? You've got a date on that?
Late 1st, early 2nd century.
Back at the
And
heart
you're
of
not,
the site,
well, you're nowhere near the bottom of the ditch. So if we get in first century stuff this far up, makes you wonder what you got from lower down.
It's a promising start. These late 1st century finds take us back before the construction of the stone fort in around 130 AD. But there's no dating evidence in our first trench. In fact, despite Matt's earlier optimism, there's little sign of the stone buildings we'd expected to find.
So have you sorted this out now, Matt?
Yep, we've got it. That is the bottom of Hoopel's trench, finally.
Right.
You can see, though, that there's none of this lovely masonry left. And we know that's the bottom of his trench because, look, the most exciting find of Trench 1 so far.
Oh, well, that's not Roman, is it, at all?
You're getting good at this,
Oh, yeah, it's been a 19th century willow pattern.
And that was from well, it's from down there in the backfill, so that's confirmed that it's Victorian.
So, once he'd done those nice drawings of all that nice masonry, somebody must have pinched the stonework, in fact.
This is the first row of mausoleums to be found in Britain for 150 years, and only the second ever to be discovered. It's a find of national significance. Towards the end of the day, John started to get really excited about an area over here where he found this mysterious circular thing. So, Phil, have we found our mysterious circular feature?
We have, but it's not circular, it's square. This is it. You've got that straight edge there, and there's another straight edge there.
Yeah.
I think you could interpret that as a square mausoleum.
Is it a mausoleum for a very small person or a pet?
No, not at all. I mean, it's perfectly feasible to have a cremation in there, and you can actually get a burial in there. I mean, when you look at the size of Ian against the inside thing, you could actually squeeze a human body in there and get it in there, no problem.
So there could still be a burial there?
There could well be a burial in there.
Bridge, it's a nice piece of masonry over there.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed it. It is indeed. It looks to be part of a column. You see this curved edge around here? That would have been the front of it.
Why is it flat on the other side?
Well, it's really been put up for aesthetic reasons rather than structural. So, of course, as it was standing there, this flat side would have been flush against the wall of the mausoleum, and then you would have just seen that curved column on the front. So there was no need to actually build a round column.
Yeah, but this is only half the story, isn't it? You've got something fairly small over there, but you've got this massive building here. You've got a wall there, a return there, a wall there, a return there. It's huge.
Ah, but you see, you're taking the obvious interpretation, which was exactly the interpretation that I came to when I first came here, and thinking that you did have this one big building. But you see, what we've got on the geophysics is this, which actually contradicts that there's going to be a wall across there, literally going across there, and we have no archaeological evidence for it.
So we're going to continue digging for the wall that Geophys says is here, while extending our trench to see if these two outer walls do join up. The truth is, it's mid-afternoon on day 3 and the layout of the mausolea is still a puzzle. Raysan and Guy are looking at possible models. Guy suspects each mausoleum was made up of a central chamber surrounded by a walled enclosure. But to confirm this, we need to find all 4 walls.
Oh! That's it, it's it there, isn't it? Yeah. There, look, there it is, it's pea grit.
This has been a truly remarkable dig. We came to this hill in search of a vicus, the civilian settlement that supported the Roman fort, and in the process we uncovered an entire lost landscape. We located the vicus along the road on either side of the fort, but we also discovered a huge earlier fort which pushes the history of Vonovia back to the very beginning of Roman occupation in the north, and a row of 3 mausolea, the first group to be discovered in Britain for 150 years. We came here in search of the living, but found a city of the dead, a street lined with grand tombs, a little piece of the Roman world in the far north of the empire. And at its heart, perhaps the grandest mausoleum of all.
OK, Antonius, my brother and fellow comrade soldier at the mighty fort of Vonovia up there, we've come down the Street of Tombs to venerate the memory of our great ancestor, our great-great-grandfather, the mighty general who once acted as a soldier here, and we've come down to his tomb. Now we've got to go through the vast mighty door that would have once been here, pivoting there on iron, and in we come to the mausoleum area, and towering above us here is his grave, with an inscription that records his name, his mighty exploits, and around here other graves of his brother and his cousins, other members of the family. And these are the men who make you and me important people in the fort today, and our great hope one day is that we'll be buried here too.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.